very warm good morning to you all. Today we have with us two distinguished guests. I welcome Professor Janet Wilson, Professor of English and Post-Colonial Studies at the University of Northampton, and Dr. Lisa Mooney-Smith. She is Associate Dean of Arts for Research and Enterprise at the University of Northampton. They are representing a consortium of university. I welcome you, ma'am, on behalf of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University and Office of the Commissioner, Higher Education, Government of Gujarat. Today we're going to have session on research in higher education and post-colonialism and after. I also welcome my friends on my right side, Dr. Pranav Joshipura and Mr. Harith. They are from Uma and Nathiba College, Gandhinagar. I would request Dr. Lisa Mooney-Smith to deliver her lecture on research in higher education. The session is all yours, ma'am.
Thank you. Firstly, may I extend huge gratitude to those who've kindly supported us to make this trip to Gujarat and the warm reception we've received, as well as the eagerness to explore collaboration between our two countries. Professor Janet Wilson and I were asked to speak on our respective fields of research expertise, and to do this I will endeavour to present a brief overview of the research landscape in the UK and in the intrinsic ways in which we might come together to exploit mobilisation of academic researchers as well as students. I will focus more on the macro level of interactions that are being steered by government interests and attempt to lay out a number of early markers as to how we might develop a relationship initially at a more intimate level, with a view to impacting upon larger scale interests as the partnership grows. As my own research areas focus upon the micro-sociological aspects of academic relationships, and particularly those between the arts and humanities and corporate industry, I will frame my presentation within the context of raising the impact and profile of those disciplines in an international arena where they are often seen to reside on the peripheries of key agendas. Professor Wilson will follow my talk with a presentation that captures interactions at a more intimate level through her work on post-colonial literature and the way in which culture and literatures collide to say something new about the reception and perception of cultural identity and exchange. Somehow I may have landed the less animated of the two talks, but I'll make direct links to some of the mechanisms by which we might realise our ambitions and move forward. First slide. I will talk about the UK research environment and the relatively new preoccupation with what we have come to know in the UK as the knowledge transfer agenda, and the impacts of scholarly activity that moves beyond academia. The international agenda and how the UK is preparing the ground for greater interaction and collaboration between agencies as well as researchers. And the foundations for early discussions and what was proposed in meetings that we had in the UK earlier this year. I'll also talk about the consortium map of research expertise in the UK in the East Midlands region, showing areas of potential confluence and collaboration with Gujarat institutions. And finally, I'll talk more about how we might realise some of these ambitions and get activities underway through early student exchange, through to developing our mutual networks and securing research funding for longer-term research collaboration and intellectual exchange. The next slide. I will endeavour to offer up a brief overview of the research landscape in the UK, particularly the challenges we face in becoming both highly responsive to the demands for research to develop reach beyond the confines of the institution, as well as the role international collaboration and exchange plays in extending and contributing to new knowledge. Research is by nature for the highly curious. It challenges to reflect upon the role one plays in the culture and makeup of society, and to seek one's place in the order of things. As we see from the quote in the slide, it is the deliberate and dedicated activity that generates, compiles, analyses, synthesises and propagates our deepest insights into who we are, where we come from, and the cultural expressions we have crafted for ourselves. Scholarship has become highly visible, moving beyond the tradition of the university and its civic responsibility, to become a recognised factor in the innovation, creativity and success of our UK economy. Although we are here in Gujarat to explore the potential for a range of disciplinary fields of interest, it is the intention of Professor Wilson and myself to first explore partnership in the arts and humanities subjects, which have traditionally fallen outside the interests of innovation and entrepreneurial agendas. It is with the arts and humanities that I'll refer to throughout the following presentation, but this does not preclude our wider interest with the applied sciences, but seeks to add value to their dialogue. Next slide. In order to understand the UK research landscape, we must first view the context of changes in the landscape, which demand of all sectors of a university that research be seen to be more outward-looking and be of greater benefit to the wider economy of the nation. University institutions have long been associated with generating knowledge as a key component to enterprise and innovation. They have made great strides into technological advancements, patents, and the pursuit of intellectual property rights, and are noted for bringing the knowledge economy in line with the economy at large. For universities, this has meant that we are beginning to see a shift from a grant to an exchange economy in higher education. This has required new institutional orderings and modified academic regimes that govern and reward entrepreneurialism. In the recent history of the entrepreneurial university, the role of the arts and humanities in the wider economy is often overlooked, particularly where a discipline has seemingly little resonance in an applied setting and perceived to demonstrate little or no influence upon industry investment or government policy. There is perhaps a pressing need to re-examine the term and impact of what we in the UK have come to be known as knowledge transfer, a term becoming increasingly dominant in our institutions and funding regimes where the university meets business. Beyond this more overt context, knowledge transfer is also becoming synonymous with the knowledge economy, the economy of the intellectual. As we move from a predominantly industrialised economy to one which is preoccupied by information as a source of wealth creation, the emphasis on knowledge has meant that the arts and humanities are undergoing renewed social and political interest in relation to their place within and outside academic contexts. As information relies on a transfer of knowledge, both the use of that knowledge and the impact it may have upon society has become heightened. Whilst universities in the past have essentially enjoyed a level of self-governance and remained at what could be considered at a suitable distance from the dictates of government, the last 10 years have seen significant changes in the UK higher education sector. As the knowledge economy has grown, so has the demand on universities to feed and nurture the economy. The rise in enterprise and entrepreneurship has brought with it a blurring of the edges between universities, industry and government. It is well documented that universities are critical to the economy, but little is known about how such a transaction takes place. Even with the increased awareness of knowledge transfer and its inclusion in major policy directives, government is still struggling to articulate how knowledge transfer occurs and what its potential may be. In terms of the international exchange of knowledge, this is even more underdeveloped, particularly for the arts and humanities scholars. During the 1990s, there was a marked growth in the transfer of knowledge between UK universities and industry at large, embedded in both government drives for innovation and increased funding made available for higher education to bolster this agenda. As the increased focus upon the movement of knowledge and expertise has become a key factor for university investment, there has also been a need to focus on the systems and processes that may aid those types of interactions or transactions. Although the arts and humanities are not alone in navigating this terrain within the institutional context, they are at a much earlier stage in aligning their research culture, belief systems and practices. It is with this intention that we hope to build our relationship with institutions in Gujarat, whilst at the same time raising the impact and profile of the disciplines themselves through dedicated and targeted partnership. I'll go on to talk more about what that will look like and how a few key areas where we might actually start the process off. Next slide. So what is knowledge transfer and why is this agenda key to our international partnerships? The terms and references associated with knowledge transfer are broadly confusing and more often inconsistent, particularly during its emergence throughout the 1980s and 90s. It was a phrase coined to respond to the increased focus upon the core manufacturing technologies and high-tech firms whose outputs were a direct and overt asset to the economy at large. Traditional disciplines found little in common with these economic drives, where knowledge rather than widgets might be considered a viable outcome of the research environment. The perception that the arts and humanities offer a lack of such benefits beyond the institution is beginning to change as we see more interaction between researchers and external organisations, and the intellectual reach of academic interactions extending beyond traditional borders of discipline, institution and geographic location, and driven by a commitment to collaboration. A recent definition of knowledge transfer, in its simplest sense, is the feedback mechanism in an economy of knowledge powered by engagement and collaboration. The past 40 years has brought with them a marked shift to mass higher education expansion across the globe. It has seen both research and teaching expand exponentially alongside political demands, new funding regimes and the pull toward commercial and private interests. In the timeline in which these events were evolving and shaping the academic landscape, we can begin to understand more about the influences of not only the political and social climate of the times, but the cultural plates that were continually shifting, splitting and regrouping amongst academia. Amidst these shifts, arts and humanities research was to find itself not only challenged by advancements in technology and industry, but also continually embroiled in a deep-rooted debate around their value and their purpose. In the UK, the research landscape has begun to change, and the recent inclusion of the Arts and Humanities Research Council into the National Research Council family in the UK has meant that the voice of these disciplines are gaining resonance. UK universities are beginning to find new ways of demonstrating the intellectual reach of these disciplines that may impact on society in more unusual ways. Examples of where this activity is emerging can be seen in the following, which are projects that I have observed as potential exemplars of the power of cross-disciplinary approaches to scholarly inquiry and innovation. Next slide. So, examples: geospatial science and underwater archaeology, an unusual partnership, where geospatial science and archaeology are coming together to exploit knowledge of laser scanning and sonar in the recovery of offshore wrecks, leading to new ways of working in marine management and sustainable conservation policies. Philosophy and corporate banking, not often two things that are joined together, where philosophy is becoming recognised for its interactions with international corporate banking, utilising knowledge of risk and causation rooted in metaphysics, which has often kept intellect and industry apart, I hasten to add, to shape the future of fiscal policies. Acoustic science and history, where acousticians and historians are utilising joint expertise of real-time technologies and archival records to recreate places no longer in existence. For example, a 16th century Cistercian chapel for medieval chanters to experience singing in a space where the score was originally conceived. This collaborative venture has also been able to explore exploration of the outcomes in developing real-time spaces for orchestral practice and training. Collaborations also moved to dancers and engineers, where dancers might work with engineers to devise new ways to detect early knee injuries, or musicians might work with medical scientists to understand how sound spaces might aid recovery, both of which have developed new software and new practices in the design of medical facilities and hospitals. And so on. We have lots of examples in the UK of how this occurs. These few exemplars have had a profound effect on the researchers and companies involved, encouraging a breakdown of the perceptions that traditional arts and humanities are purely intellectual pursuits. Disciplines such as theology and philosophy are often thought to sit on the peripheries of the knowledge transfer agenda. And my own work is particularly embedded in uncovering such potential and making more explicit their contribution. If we begin to develop strong models of practice from the arts and humanities disciplines, we may be able to encourage and intellectualise knowledge transfer as an asset to international exchange, particularly in understanding what role our disciplines might play in a changing global economy. If we step back for a moment and look at the context in which research is being both described and developed at an international scale, we will see that what I have just offered up is a snapshot of opportunities we are collectively equipped to explore, but perhaps neither fully exploiting or capturing. The university's UK research report on international research collaborations identifies the strong growth in the international research collaboration in the UK, which is supported by the research councils, but particularly promotes cross and multidisciplinary methods as a way forward. Next slide. Alongside the Research Councils UK are also a plethora of other organisations, and I'm sorry that the diagram is not up on the screen. We'll make sure you have it in the presentation. There are lots of organisations and agencies committed to supporting our collaborative research interests, including and as well as working in a multidisciplinary way. They are seeking multi-agency and cross-sectoral partnerships, as we see in the mix in the slide, which we can't see at the moment. Not all are represented here, and it would take too long to present the full network of interest that we might tap into. But in particular, I'd like to highlight the India Research Network, the British Council, and the Research Councils UK as three in particular who are striving to forge meaningful links between India and the UK research base, and who are receptive to developing the place of the arts and humanities in these directives. So the India Research Network, the Research Councils UK, hereafter RC UK, they have an office in India, and SIN India led on the establishment of the network, which aims to ensure joint working, maximising potential and minimising overlap. The key features of the consortium approach already being adopted here in Gujarat. We need to ensure that we're also able to replicate these features in the UK and ensure the arts and humanities have a valued place at an international level. The British Council has been instrumental in developing these relationships, and particularly between links between our two countries, and perhaps the longest standing of those partners listed. I'll offer up a number of mechanisms in which they are supporting partnership activity shortly. RC UK, the primary role of the research councils is to fund research. Each year the councils invest around 1.3 billion in research in UK universities and around 500 million in their own research institutes,